10 years. 10 long years we've been waiting for a brand spanking new Pikmin game that people actually wanted. Ditto. And finally, after going completely and utterly insane, Pikmin 4 is real! Well then, how's it going, everybody? I'm Burhead2, and welcome to a B2 review, where every day is a good opportunity to change the name, and every day is an opportunity wasted. Today on the chopping block, Pikmin 4. Nintendo GameCube. I patently refuse to believe this game came out. I simply believe the Wii Vitality sensor got released before Pikmin 4 did. But I remember playing it. Maybe I really have gone insane. I suppose I might as well just review my delusions. Which makes this a good time as any to explain how my reviews work. They're pretty darn simple. I choose 10 categories I believe best represent the game, to go on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being the worst, 10 being the best, and 5 being rather average. Then I say a remark that vaguely references the game I'm talking about, Fate or Black, category title card, and... okay, I'll stop. The art style and the sound design, too, are more toy-like. I can't say I've liked it much, although maybe it just hasn't grown on me yet. The designs of things and the colors are simpler, more vibrant than they were in Pikmin 3. That came as one natural evolution of the art style of the GameCube games, where Pikmin 4 is more an HD version of it. I happen to really like the way Pikmin 3 looks, so I'm more than teensy-weensy wheel a bit disappointed that Pikmin 4 doesn't look like Pikmin 3. Now everything I just said is kind of useless, because art style doesn't seem to have much to do with the technical stuff when it comes to how a game looks. At least not in this case. I think. Don't get me wrong, this game absolutely looks better than Pikmin 3, it's just hard to appreciate the detail where the detail doesn't exist. At least it still has water physics. If you've ever played a Pikmin game that wasn't these, or this, then congratulations, you know everything. It's strategy, and some time management, and some resource management as well. All that fun stuff. There's also Ice Pikmin, freezing water enemies is fun, I guess. Then there's Ochi, who's basically just a big and frankly overpowered Pikmin. He fights, he carries, he doesn't multiply, but he does get eaten. He can carry Pikmin across water, he can jump, and is resistant to the elements provided you have the equipment. He can do everything short of fly, and even then he can still reach flying enemies. He does everything you need a Pikmin to do. Speaking of Pikmin, the game gives you access to every Pikmin type in the series, except for Puffmin, Bulbmin, and Glow Pikmin, I guess, which is a cool idea, but at least the thing's feeling a little directionless. You don't spend much time with the Pikmin types, you only have to use them for what they're good for, and each type is only good for a small amount of things. Night expeditions are a fun change of pace, yet found incredibly short in some cases. But these are more nitpicks, chinks in the armor, cracks in the block. It's still Pikmin, and then it's at least worth a... You know the manhole arena and the Valley Repose where you fight with Red Bull Orb in Pikmin 2? Imagine that, but as the whole game. Honestly, the areas are huge. You could probably shrink them about 20% and they still be playable. The areas are rather supposed to be populated, and once you clear everything out, it becomes a chore to walk through. Admittedly, I prefer the level design of the GameCube Pikmin entries. I like how the areas are small but they wrap around themselves. Pikmin 4 does try and do that, but the areas get blown up 2.5 times their original size. Sure, they're the biggest areas in the series, but they don't do a whole lot to justify that. The caves are more often free of this problem, although not completely. Boss arenas have a nasty habit of being too big. They're no longer randomly generated, meaning there's more of an opportunity for well-crafted levels, and more opportunities for intricate designs. On occasion. Then there's Indoor Challenge and Indoor Battles, whose layouts are... better. My major complaint for this category is the level design just has a habit of not being very interesting, and that's probably because there's not much happening in it. But again, maybe it just hasn't grown on me yet. Maybe I'm being so harsh because this game isn't exactly what I wanted, and I'll be scoring it on that. I think that boss that tests your knowledge and ability to use against mechanics are good bosses. For example, I think Glenbowser from Mario Galaxy 2 is a well-designed boss, at least by this metric. But the thing is, Pikmin doesn't really have much in the way of level gimmicks or things like that. Generally, once you finish a Pikmin game, you're basically doing the same thing the entire way through. Well, if you can't do mechanical consistency, try thematic consistency. It's so much easier. But it's harder. For me, at least, because I try to look for the thing it's not doing. Still, I wouldn't say the bosses were bad. They were fun and well made. Maybe except for the final boss. Bad. Okay, I'll explain. This game is really easy. Now, sure, I've got years of Pikmin expertise under my belt, but I barely felt challenged. The game only gets really difficult at the very end. In that way, it's a lot like Luigi's Mansion 3. And, you know, Pikmin 4 can be more like this game in one other area that I'll get to. But again, this game is very easy. For example, The level design allows you to run past everything if you want to, which I don't know why you'd want to, because Ochi is OP, Ice Pikmin are OP, Purple Pikmin are OP, and Spicy Sprays are OP, and the game cancels things out like the candy on Halloween night. I got Platinum Medals on almost all Dandori Challenge and Dandori Battles on my first try, doing it completely blind. If it's not a good example, I don't know what is. This was probably all done in the name of accessibility. To a lot of people who haven't played a Pikmin game before or are good at it, a nice easy stepping stone. But that doesn't really make much sense. They did the same thing with Pikmin 3, making that a good entry point for the series, and they put that on the Switch, and they put the first 2 games on the Switch. I don't have a problem with accessibility, but when your accessibility hampers my experience, then I do. This game was undoubtedly made with single player in mind, and it's a decent single player experience at that. A lot of things to see, a lot of things to do, with some variety thrown in for good measure. Although not strictly a single player affair, side modes, and let's talk about challenge mode here, aren't really as good as it could be. Challenge mode, or well, it's called Pikmin 3, mission mode as you know it, doesn't really exist. Got baked into the main game, which means it's not a side mode anymore. And what's really disappointing is there's no dedicated mission mode. If you want to play what the game has, you have to load your save file and talk to the guy to replay them. There's not even an option on the main menu, even though there isn't one for the Dandori battles. It's a shame because mission mode in Pikmin 3 was really good, and the Dandori challenges here are flatly not as good. Now, I played the game entirely in single player, making me one of the more qualified people to talk about this. I'll save the PvP mode for later and first get to co-op. It's bad. But let's be honest, maybe I'm missing how it's secretly super fun or something, but Pebble Pitcher is stupid. Who looked at Super Mario Galaxy and was like, the co-op in this game was good, let's do that again. Because it's not. It's the lamest thing imaginable. And the thing is, why didn't they use Ochi? The only thing I could think of was that player 1 and player 2 would have different abilities. That is, Ochi is more powerful than your captain. And, yeah, that's true, but it's not that big of a deal. The only thing I could think of is that there are certain tunnels that only Ochi can go through, and there are climbable walls only your captain can use. To which I say, Luigi's Mansion 3 does kind of multiplayer flawlessly. Why can't Pikmin 4 do it? I can't think of any good reasons as to why player 2 can't be Ochi. As it stands, the game is stuck with little brother multiplayer. Mom said you had to let him play with you, so hand him the second controller, you can't do too much damage. And if you have someone who isn't your little brother who wants to play Pikmin 4 with you, then one of you is going to get the short end of the stick. The point is, there shouldn't be a short end of the stick, or at least it shouldn't be this short. As for the Dandori battles, I can't say fighting for the heaviest item sounds like a very interesting concept. Evidently, PvP in Pikmin games also peaked in Pikmin 3. I'm sorry, but it's true. In my opinion. But if you think about it like it's an alternative, not a replacement, it's not so bad. But what is bad is the score, which is... Pikmin, I feel, might be kind of known for being replayable. The game tracking your stats and presenting you to once you finish the game, and saving those stats seems to egg you on to do it better, faster, and with less deaths. But there's a reason people more often replay the first game than the second. That's because Pikmin can be beaten in an afternoon, whereas Pikmin 2 requires an entire day. Maybe 2. Pikmin 4 is about a 30-hour long game, meaning the arcadey feeling and the replayability factor is going, it's still going, my oh my, look at it fly, it's going, and it's gone!
Home run!
The sheer time investment would dissuade people from playing the game. But it is still Pikmin, but I don't know if the game actually saves your stats from previous playthroughs. A good chunk of the music for the above-ground areas and the caves as well is quite ambient, a collection of relatively random noises. I've nothing against ambient tracks, but when I play a game, I expect to hear music in the background. Although this could be because Pikmin 4 has an incredibly dynamic soundtrack. Or so my sources say. Admittedly, I found it pretty hard to tell. I think the game could benefit from having more musical music. If Pikmin 2 can do it, Pikmin 4 can. The amount of time spent with more ambient tracks seems to be disproportionate to the amount there are. When the game does use more, as I said, musical music, it sounds pretty good, although it falls along with the toy-like aesthetic which I already mentioned I'm not a fan of. There are even multiple boss themes, none of which are really up my alley, but I can appreciate the soundtrack for what it's doing. The amount of stuff here and the dynamicness, honestly I'd be a fool not to like it. The game is pretty bug-free in my experience. Most of my problems with this category had to do with a few small design decisions. For example, this game will not ever, physically cannot, ever, not even in your wildest fantasies, shut up! For some reason, Colin and Shepard, who have the combined personality of a cardboard box, feel to comment on almost everything. When Pikmin dies, Colin has to say something. Ochi comes back, Shepard has to say something, which is particularly redundant because it's not exactly hard to figure out whether an Ochi is in your group or not. In fact, some might say it's pretty obvious. A particular example is when fighting an armored cannon. Wait. It's actually called Horn Cannon Beetle. Okay, when fighting a horn cannon beetle, which is only found in the last half of the game, mind you, the game points out the horn cannon beetle is vulnerable every time you throw a Pikmin to its blowhole. Like, no game, I thought this was an Easter egg. I'm going to sit here and marvel at it while I figure out how to kill it. The game also likes to tell you exactly how to do something by carefully reminding you 20 hours in the game how to do a certain action. This all may be a bit better if they had personality, but Shepard's personality is just, let's get to work, and Khan's personality is an empty whiteboard. Somewhat similar things happen with the Andorian challenges and Andorian battles. The characters there also know how to shut up, although it's a bit more bearable. Pikmin 3 had the same system, but it worked better there because it wasn't quite as overbearing. On a similar topic, does the game need visual notifications for building bridges and tearing down walls and stuff too? Sound cues of the previous games worked just fine. As for another thing, the Pikmin, well, let's say you're running along a shoreline pretty close to it, because you're not riding Oji, the pivot point of your group of Pikmin is right behind your character. If you were to try and turn away from the shoreline, the Pikmin in the back of your group will fling themselves into the water because the pivot point is too far away from them. Pikmin, in previous games, were not this stupid. Using Oji the entire time will alleviate the issue, but that's lame! I don't wanna! The auto lock-on sometimes locks onto things you don't want to, like say lesser enemy or something you've already killed while something else is eating your Pikmin. It doesn't happen very often, but it does, and it has, and so it is enough for me to dislike the auto lock-on feature. That, and I miss having a cursor. The game will only allow you to the minimum amount of Pikmin it takes to pick up an object onto an object. I suppose it can be nice, but it's only really useful if there's something suspended over a gap. If you want to throw more Pikmin onto something, you have to wait for the Pikmin to pick up an object and then throw more. Sometimes I just want to throw 7 Pikmin onto a 5 pellet in peace. Although these are issues that do hamper the game, they don't come up too often, unless you're Khan telling me how to perform a rush. But like I said, the game is pretty bug-free, so I think I'll give it a... Oh, wait, I forgot about the loading times. Average loading time for a case level, about 11 seconds. Average loading time for above ground area, about 24 seconds. These loading times are, well, I wouldn't say they're bad, they're just not good. And that was the last category, so let's take a moment now to look at all the scores I've given so far. So without further ado, the final score is 57 out of 100. That's lower than I thought it would be. And there could be a lot of reasons for this. Maybe it's me, maybe I haven't gotten accustomed to it yet, maybe I grew established after waiting for so long, or maybe the game just has problems. It's hard to tell. I want to absolutely love this game. I want to jump with the deep end, two-fisted, which is a terrible amalgamation of metaphors, but I can't shake the feeling it could be better. In typical Nintendo fashion, they had to have one or two incredibly stupid things to make sure the game isn't a 10 out of 10 across the board. But here's to hoping the real game is better than my delusions. I'm gonna go ahead and take my pills. You know, some had the pharmacy, and long story short, I couldn't get it for like 3 months. I'm going to go back to hoping for the next Nintendo Direct. Fingers crossed. You know, it's kind of weird for me and Moto to talk about Pikmin Bloom in that one Direct, even though it's like a year old at that point. Really out of place. You thought something might come of it, but nope, nothing happened.